Welcome to the Soul of Medicine. Yay, welcome everybody to our podcast this week. We have an awesome guest. Her name is Shauna Kennedy. I met her almost a year ago in some trainings and I just thought she was really amazing as a coach, a therapist, just all the things, girlfriend. She's hilarious. She's also very deep. And I was like, can you please come on this podcast so we can see what you're up to and help us get, some perspective on a lot of things in our life. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I was humbled and grateful and excited, and I can't wait to get into all of it.
And I love your whole look. Your purple. It's so goddessy. It's amazing. Which is kind of how I think of you, honestly.
Thank you.
You're amazing. So let me introduce you. So Shauna is a life coach, founder and coach of Soar Life Coaching based in Florida. She is a certified dream builder coach with Life Mastery Institute, the premier training center for transformational coaching. Shauna specializes in helping women who have or are experiencing complex trauma, grief, or abuse to navigate their healing process, cross the void from the nightmare to their dreams, and create a richer, fuller life. For over 15 years, Shauna has studied and implemented transformational success principles and is a sought-after public speaker, writer, trainer, and certified coach. Shauna does workshops and coaching programs to help people across the globe break through limitations and achieve greater results than they've ever known before. She also uses deep inquiry tools in her practice to help women on their healing journey. Welcome, Shauna. Thanks for being here. You write so beautifully, and I'm really drawn into your words. And in your writing, you say that there was a moment when you looked up to God and promised him that you would never allow a woman within your reach to feel as alone, abandoned, or unloved by life as you did. Could you share with us your story and events in your life that led you to that moment?
Mm-hmm. I always love to pause when I either hear that or when I see it in my own writings, because it's a reminder of that promise that I made. So yeah, thank you for letting me hear it and be reminded of that. And so in 2019, my father passed away very traumatically and very unexpectedly. And I'm an only child, and I grew up in Hawaii, where the responsibility normally falls on the oldest or the only to take care of the other parent and to take care of anything that was going on. But he was also my champion. And so in that moment, everything of the whole world got placed on me. And I had lost the bottom out from underneath me. And it felt like this very floaty, unreal feeling. And I remember waking up the next day, looking at the sky, going, how did the sun come back up? I don't understand. And that's all I could remember is going, now what? It was the deepest now what in my body that I'd ever felt. And almost a year to the day later, I went through a domestically violent divorce. And there was a moment in there where I looked up at the sky and I was like, the sun cannot be coming up again. We did not spin another time. This can't be happening. It can't be. And that big resonating, now what, just filled my chest. And it was so heavy, but so empty at the same time that, again, I was floating through this void. And it was the year after my divorce. It was the first time that my kids were going to be gone for Christmas. And as a mother, I had never woken up on Christmas and not heard the magic of Christmas going on. We've all been up all night and we bake the cinnamon rolls that they're ready at 6 a.m. and we've spent the night putting all the presents under the tree and we just want to sleep in, but everyone's in your bed waiting let's open stockings. Come on, Mom, get up. And I realized that it was going to be completely silent. And I laid in my bed on Christmas Eve, and all I could think was the only answer was to not be alive. Like, if it's going to be this silent, like, let it be that silent permanently. Like, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. My dad's not here. My marriage had completely fallen apart. I was entering into a place where I was realizing how abusive it was. And that realization was scary, even though we were out and we were safe. And now there was this silence on Christmas morning. And the now what was no longer answerable. I just said, the now what is, I don't need to be here. And I pulled myself through Christmas. And shortly after that, in January, I had a really good friend who I was working for at the time as a nutrition coach with elite athletes who had eating disorders. So I was doing more life coaching than I was nutrition coaching in the moment. And she said, hey, we're going to do a professional development and I would love for you to be there. And I said, okay. And it was this 3.5-hour vision workshop put on by this woman. And the whole time I sat there and I was like, you're so unrelatable to me. Like, nothing that you're saying relates to any part of my life. And about halfway through, she said something that resonated with just like the deep part of the now what in me. And I said, I'm going to give you about 90 seconds to convince me that I should trust you. And in those 90 seconds, she did. And by the end of that vision workshop, I had signed up to do a year of coaching with her, and she became my life coach. And you would think that that's where the story, like, awesome, like we found the now what, and that's where the answers were. But 10 days later, my youngest daughter was diagnosed with a congenital brain malformation called Chiari malformation type 1, that if we didn't address because it was so large in her, it would end up killing her. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Like, life cannot not love me this much. The void cannot be this big. Because in that moment, everyone that I knew was saying, you're the strongest person I know. I don't know how you're getting through this. I'd never be able to do it. And I wanted to scream at everyone, I don't know how I'm doing it. Like, please just see me in the depths of this. Please don't tell me how strong I am. Please don't tell me how we're going to get through this. Please just see me in the depths of that. And that was the moment where I looked up and I said, I cannot be the only one that feels this alone. And I remember kneeling. I have an altar in my house, and I knelt next to my altar and I said, my highest power, I address as God. And I said, God, please allow me the gifts for my light to touch any woman who feels as alone as I do, because I can't be the only one. I'm not that special. Like, we aren't. I can't be the only one in this depth of darkness. And if I'm asking you to give me this, then there must be a way for me to get it out there. I believe that if you ask a question, there is absolutely an answer to that question. And so that's how I got to be in the life coaching part. I went through the life coaching course as a client, and then I said, this is how I want to reach women. And then I realized that looking back through the death of my father and then my divorce and realizing what domestic abuse really looked like, and then going through a medical diagnosis with my youngest, that was incredibly scary. The narrative and the language that we use to support people really just sucked. Like, to be honest, that's what it was. Like, it wasn't helpful. And I said, how do I be a part of that change? And that's when Dr. Gabor and Compassionate Inquiry popped up on my radar. And I said, this is the answer right here. And when I get given an answer, I take it.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so beautiful. And you're right. I mean, I myself know that loneliness. I've had that situation. The first Christmas after getting divorced, it was like the kids weren't there. You know, I thought I could handle it. It's fine. I love being alone. This is great. And it just hits you. And I was listening to you, and the thought of, I am alone. And then the other way of thinking that I can't possibly be the only one are two different questions, because you can go down a rabbit hole of like, I'm alone, and then involute into that space, and then, or go into the, I can't possibly be alone. And then it sounds like that was the portal for you to begin to open. So how did you choose that? Or was that a grace moment? Or because that's a very big pivot. And not everybody can go into that open portal and see that then unwind as or open as a gift, because oftentimes it goes down the other way. And this is what I see in my practice a lot. And, sometimes it's a point of no return. So could you, that moment, if that even makes sense, could you speak to that?
I think it's both. There was grace, absolutely, in that. Also, I have been known for that my whole life. I have friends that call me Baby Yoda, and they all say, go to Shauna, go to Hummingbird and ask her, because she'll ask you the opposite question. And so it was something inside of me that was planted, whether that be from my highest power or through life's lessons, that if one question exists, then the opposite question must also exist. So as I sat in that aloneness and I leaned on my highest power, it was, what's the opposite question? And that's that first, that big deep exhale that we kind of take when we're like, okay, I have a choice in this moment. And that is to either sit and say, I am so alone. But that broke my heart, because instantly I thought of a woman who was also alone on Christmas without her babies, wondering, what the heck am I supposed to do this morning? What do I make myself for breakfast all by myself? Like, there are no presents under the tree for me. There's no presents under the tree for the kids. And I saw her very clearly. And that's something I've always been able to do, is to see another in that situation and go like, what would I do for her? How can I be a gift to her? And then say, how can I be that gift to me? Because that's what I need right now. And that's what I love to teach all of my clients, but especially women, because I don't think we've been given the permission to do that as women very often, is, what would you say to your best friend? What would you say to a woman that you loved wholeheartedly and unconditionally? Now, how can you give that to yourself? And so I think that deep exhale moment, I'm alone, but also I cannot be the only one.
Yeah, that's really stunning to have even that moment or the choice. And I know that you described yourself, one of your gifts is that light. And when you were talking, I was like, oh, I remember saying in some of my dark, like, where is the light? There is no light. This is so dark, even through the pandemic, and all the global trauma, all the death and dying that was going on. I was like, it's so dark. I remember saying this on the winter solstice, which is, it was literally the darkest day. And so how that question can be like, am I alone? Or like, can I be the only one? Or, this is so dark, where's the light? In a despair kind of way, or like literally like, where's the light? Show me the light. And in that sliver of a moment, I'm getting chills right now, like thinking about that. And you being this facilitator of that, or awareness of just the sliver of, you have a choice, then let the universe, God, higher power, whatever that is, like, take it from there. But it's just that millisecond of a moment where the possibility is just really stunning.
It's like that moment when your heartbeat and it creates the electricity. Like, I always remind everyone that I talk to, like, when you're asking where the light is in the dark, that's beating in you. The light is you. Part of in my writings that I come back to all the time is that I was looking for the light out there. Like, just show me the light. And I was forgetting over and over again that the light was me. The light was me. And that's why I couldn't find it out there, is because I was looking past myself.
Wow.
That's you.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. Could you define for us what complex trauma is, and what are some symptoms a client, a patient would have, and how would they know that they would have complex trauma, or even trauma for that matter? Because a lot of patients are like, no, I'm good. I'm fine.
That one right there is the first one.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
I'm good. Okay. Awesome. Let's sit with that for a moment. So especially if we use a compassionate inquiry filter or approach, we wouldn't really separate trauma from complex trauma for us, for that approach. But trauma, complex trauma, is not what has happened to you, as Dr. Gabor says, but what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. And so one of the first things that you would see is a disconnection from yourself. So anytime we have a gut reaction or our intuition comes up, or we have that I just know feeling and we ignore it, that's a result of trauma. Because that's our greatest, strongest, most natural guide. We would never survive out in the wild if we were not able to fully rely on our gut instinct, our intuition. And so what trauma does is it creates a distance between that voice and us. And so we separate from ourselves. So if you ever find yourself questioning your judgment or questioning your gut reaction or questioning your intuition, that's a pretty major sign that there might be a story that needs to get addressed, right? Along the same lines is then disconnection from others. How do we view other people? How many people are hyper independent? That's a trauma response, right? I can't trust anyone else. No one's going to do it as good as me. I just need to do it myself. Those are all ways that trauma comes up and makes itself known, that there's a story that we need to get into and help heal. Along the same lines, as we keep going out, right, you'll see that there's a pattern. So we start with ourselves and then a disconnection to others. And then there's an altered worldview. How you think of the world is how you experience the world. So if we're constantly thinking of the world as negative and scarce and lacking, that's what we're going to experience. And trauma tends to give us a negative worldview where, again, we can't trust the world. So we can't trust ourselves. We can't trust others. We can't trust the world, right? Pain, just in general, right? And I imagine you see this in your practice, is physical pain manifesting as physical pain, where all the stories and that trauma that we're holding inside of our body expresses itself through physical pain. And until we actually deal with the story that has caused that pain stays, right? Personal shame would be another one that I see. That's a big one that I see in a lot of my people, is that they have an acquired shame view of themselves. So I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. This is where we get people pleasing. So that desire to make sure everyone around us is comfortable and happy and at peace at the expense of ourselves and our own authenticity. Self-abandonment would be a big one. So those are just a few of the things that would come up that I would look for as a provider, as a practitioner, as a therapist, and things that I might say, hey, where does that story come from for you? Where does that habit come from? And there are no bad habits. There are just habits that are no longer adaptive for the season of life we were in, because whatever it is, whether it's people pleasing or self-abandonment or a negative worldview, that at one point was the most compassionate, non-judgmental part of you, protecting you from an overwhelming amount of pain. That's the most brilliant thing that your nervous system could have done for you in that moment. Now, we need something more adaptive so that you can live a fulfilling life and not experience that pain and that fear and that anxiety.
That is so beautifully said. And one thing that comes up for me, and so we train, and Rob does too, pharmacists, or practitioners more on the medical field that deal with the physical body. And the biggest thing that I see in the medical profession is this disconnect even from those emotions that cause the physicality. So nobody really talks about it. So we're band-aiding it with medications and supplements and surgeries and all of that. How would, if we were training young doctors or primary care people, pharmacists, and they can identify that potentially there is this trauma response or emotions trapped in the body that needs to be addressed, And I know that from some standpoint, it's like, I'm not going to open Pandora's box. I have another patient in there. So, so they can sort of skip over. I have done that early on in my practice. Like, you're fine, right? Here's this SSRI. Can I see you in 3 months? Which is that skip over. It happens. And I've had to learn how to be that container of like, screw it. I've got to help this patient deal with it. I'll be behind. It's okay, kind of thing. But is there some languaging that you would advise a practitioner to say or to have in their back pocket to begin to explore, help the patient explore that? Not in 5 minutes. I know that it can't be done that way, but for people who aren't always practitioners, who aren't always in this realm and have this kind of languaging, but to start making connections with their patients and clients, is there something that you would recommend or we could help them?
I think that maybe instead of what they could say would be the tool that could be used is mirroring, right? So that mirroring, so being able to repeat back what someone has said, not necessarily just about their physical symptoms, but listening for those key words of like, I see you and I hear you on the deepest sense. That's what really creates a container of safety. So when someone's talking to me about their physical ailments, and I might be able to ask a deeper question of like, you've been experiencing this for a long time. Like, how are you handling this? And then whatever answer they get back, to be able to mirror that language back to them instead of saying, okay, well, we're going to fix it and we're going to eliminate that. No, I see you in this, would be the first step to opening that trust, because there has to be a whole lot more trust there than just what a prescription can provide, right? And I know providers are overworked, overbooked, shorthanded. Like, they don't necessarily have the resources that they would love to be able to give more time to their patients. But I think in that quick moment, having a deep sense of I see you and I hear you past the physical symptoms that you're telling me.
Yes, absolutely.
Would create a more authentic human experience.
And that was, a question that I wanted to bring up too, because in compassion inquiry, that first tenet is the empathetic abiding presence. And I mean, you just explained, what that is and why that's so important for practitioners. And I think, we get into the, like, how can I fix that mode versus that presence of like acknowledgement, of validation, of confirmation. And I think you're right. We're always in fix it. How do I fix it? And it totally skips over that moment that you said of like, can somebody see me or be here, even the depths of my sadness, and tell me that I'm okay. I have this line where I have a lot of, my team, my spiritual team that helped me through a lot of my stuff. They're just like, honey, yes. And you'll be okay. And normalizing that kind of feeling, because it's that feeling like I'm the only one that feels this way and I shouldn't be feeling this way, or I should be over this, or I shouldn't be as sensitive, and it bypasses a lot of opportunity to do that work. So absolutely. Rob, did you have any questions around that? I see you squirming over there.
That's just fascinating, because I very much look into the mind body, but the whole trauma thing, since Kay's been into it, it's just this whole other thing. And it's just this, as complex as it can be, you all make it seem so like simple in a way to actually have someone notice the awareness. I think a lot of times it's that awareness, like, oh, like for instance, for me, like, no, I don't have trauma. Oh, wait, you just said 3 words that made me realize that I do. And I think it's the same way, even with mind body. Okay, I've got a physical ailment, and my emotions and my thoughts can actually be causing it. But now the thing is, where's that coming from? And, a question I actually do have for you in regards to that is, like, what is a common trauma that people say that's not a trauma in life?
Oh, okay. Let's get into it. So everyone looks for big T trauma, right? So we've got abuse of all kinds, all the different variations of abuse, and overt neglect. So big T trauma, everyone gets, right? That's what everyone assumes. And then, especially for compassionate inquiry, we talk about what are little T traumas. And little T traumas aren't necessarily bad things that happened to you. It's good things that should have happened to you and did not. So a disconnection from your primary caregiver for whatever reason, right? Whether it's a very, very good reason. So for instance, part of my story that I know I address with my middle daughter is my oldest son, my oldest child has moderately severe autism. And I spent the first 3 years of his life trying to learn how to be a mom to him. And that was a full-time job. But I also had my middle daughter in the midst of all that. And then bookended on the other side of her is my youngest, who was born 9 weeks early. I was life flighted one day out of my primary care doctor's office and stayed at the hospital for the next 60 days. And so it was to save my life and to save her little sister's life and to be the best mom to her older brother. But there were little T things where I could not be totally and completely and fully present, even though I baby wore her and we did attachment parenting and we co-slept and we did all the things to facilitate attachment. I was still in different places. And so we might look at some of the behaviors that my middle daughter has and go like, hey, this is a result of that little T trauma where I wasn't able to be totally and completely present through no fault of my own or her own. And so it's not that she had a horrible upbringing. It's not that she had a disengaged mother. There were things that were probably necessary for her needs as a human that I wasn't able to meet at the moment because there was a hierarchy of needs around me. And that can filter into larger networks of support and whatnot. But those are the little things. Disconnection from a primary caregiver. Maybe there was a lot of movement. We look at a lot of military kids being incredibly resilient, and they absolutely are. But there's a lot of things that we need to look at in terms of uprooting every 3 years as a child that can factor into little T traumas that can create stories that we hold on to for the rest of our lives until we address them.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Like literally that line, good things that should have happened that did not. That just, wow.
Thank you. So Satyaram, one of the compassionate inquiry teachers, calls CI, or that's the abbreviated version of that, as the relational container that you're talking about right now, and asking the right questions and going deep into that somatic, that body experience to allow them to feel what's been suppressed and to express that which has remained unexpressed. Could you walk us through a journey of a compassionate inquiry session and what a patient might expect?
In the very beginning, when a patient comes, there are like some house notes, some admin notes that we kind of go over, and we'll go over them every time as a reminder. But it's a reminder that this is their journey, and that session, whether it's 30 minutes or 60 minutes, is led by them, that they're in charge, and that I am there as a guide, as a witness, and as a safety to their experience. And so if at any point we are exploring something that they would like to explore, or that they had liked to explore in the beginning, and we get to a point where they no longer want to be exploring that in the moment, we change directions and we stop. And that permission is theirs and theirs only. I have nothing to do with that. And so they get to tell me, like, I don't want to go any further with this, or I would like to keep going. And there are points throughout the session where I will ask explicitly, is it okay if we keep going with this? And it's either yes or no. And if they say no, then I say, what would you like to explore from here? Or would you like to be done for the day? Right. Another thing that I always ask permission for is interrupting. I'll say during the session, is it okay with you if I interrupt, if I feel like that would be necessary or beneficial? And most often they say yes, but I always caveat it with, if there is ever a moment while we are together where you would like to continue talking and you do not want to be interrupted, just say, Hummingbird, I don't want to be interrupted right now. And you get to keep talking. You get to get that whole story out. So typically we will start with, what would like to be explored? So what would this person like to explore today? It could be something as simple as, you know what? I was in a business meeting yesterday and this dude sitting next to me was tapping his pencil and I literally wanted to take it out of his hands and snap it. Awesome. Let's explore that. Or it could be something much bigger if there's something much bigger going on in their life. Again, they get to decide because it's their time and their session for showing up for themselves. And so once we get the intention of the session very clear, or the journey that we would like to explore clear, I then begin asking questions. It's not my job to give advice. It's not my job to steer the conversation in any way that I believe. It's not my journey. It's not my responsibility to decide where that journey is supposed to go. It's actually my responsibility to trust where this person is going to take themselves and hold them in a safe way where they are able to do that on their own. And so guiding them into the body in the moment is a lot of what we do in CI. So when they're talking about whatever it is that they would like to explore, sometimes emotions will rise up even in the very beginning. And one of the questions is, what's going on for you in your body right now?
So this is quite different from other therapeutic approaches, which are very cognitive, which are very neck up, nothing, not to discount those at all. And what you're talking about here is, neck down, which from a physician perspective, we're dealing with the body and, there's a lot of this intellectualization that goes on and we can't, this is why a lot of illnesses and diseases aren't healed or there's a chronicity to them because we haven't gotten into that root, which occurred in the body, right? The emotions are in the body, not in the intellect, right? So that shift of neck up to neck down or living that way. Awesome.
I use that phrase a lot. I like when I have a patient or a client that's really having a hard time and they keep coming back up into their head and intellectualizing the emotion or the sensation, I'll say, I really need you to drop below your eyeballs.
Below your eyeballs.
I need you to go below your eyeballs. Yeah, like I just from here down. That's happening. And normally that will add a sense of play. So it's like I can be like, hey, I need you in your body, but I can also be like, hey, I need you to below your eyeballs. And they normally will chuckle, just like we all did. And that off gases or lightens up what they might be experiencing, which also creates a bit of safety. Playfulness creates safety. That's our first real connection with our caregivers is in playfulness. And so that safety is needed and necessary in those moments. So I will use that phrase. I need you to drop below your eyeballs.
And I was just going to say, you do have this wicked sense of humor and it does sort of lighten the mood, if you will. And I mean, is that something you've always had, or is that something, how can people find that lightness and humor and play when they're going through such difficult times?
I think it goes back to the same answer in the beginning. Part of it is gift and part of it is that sliver of light where we have a choice. And so how do we inject playfulness into this incredibly scary situation, right? When we're scared, we don't want to be happy. We want to be at ease. And the vehicle by which we get to ease is playfulness. And so we took the curriculum that I use with my clients and I said, we call it the dream room. And so when I have my clients do is I have them create a dream room where every time life seems to slip away from them somehow, I say, go back into your dream room and tell me what you see. Tell me what you feel. Tell me what you smell. Tell me what you hear. I say, how can we be playful right now inside of the fear? Because that's our vehicle to ease.
Well, and what's so cool about that is that, playfulness is the action that you're doing. And a lot of people can say, just be positive, right? And I mean, some people as an adaptation to a negative thing, they'll start cracking jokes. But the playfulness sounds like it's something completely different.
Yeah. So humor is actually one of those things in a session that I will watch for because it can be a deflection of what they're actually feeling, right? The pain is too much for me to acknowledge. So I'm going to crack a joke. And that's the off gas moment. So as a practitioner, I will look for that. And it can be both, right? There is a sense of relieving the pain, right? When I'm sitting there and with all these doctors talking about brain surgery, signing papers of things that could happen on the operating table that I don't ever want to have to look at. There is a point where my nervous system, being as brilliant as it is, says this pain is overwhelming. What can we do right now? And in that moment, because I was conscious enough and I had done enough work to know that if I crack a joke, that's probably me deflecting how much pain there is. The most compassionate thing for me to do is go, this is really incredibly painful and overwhelming. I'm going to acknowledge that and I'm going to witness that. And alongside that, I'm going to accompany that pain with something that genuinely nourishes the part of my soul that needs to be held a little bit softer and more compassionately. And that's where playfulness comes in, right? So there is a distinguishing factor between humor and cracking jokes and genuine, authentic playfulness. And they're inside of play. I think people are allowed inside of play. People give themselves more permission to take ownership and pride in their bravery. Right. So a lot of times when we're brave, we deflect being strong or being courageous, right? Like someone say, you're so strong. Well, I had to be. But inside of play, we get to be the heroes and heroines of this story. We're like, yeah, I am courageous. Yes, I am brave. Yes, I am strong.
Wow. That's so beautiful. So how would one be your client? How can we have more of Hummingbird?
I do one-on-ones. So I have a 12-week curriculum. I have a year-long curriculum. And so those are one-on-ones. And then I also do group coaching. So depending on if there's a whole group that comes in or if there are a collection of people that might want to work together on this, there is an incredible power in a group. One-on-one coaching is incredibly intimate. It has its own pros. Inside the group, there are a lot of moments of, oh, you too? Yeah, me too. And that magic and that safety gets amplified. And so I love group coaching for that reason. It's really beautiful. I also do vision workshops. So those are one-off events that are just one time. So some people might come and the 3.5 hours that we work together in the vision workshop is all they need. And they get the clarity and the power and the confidence they need to step inside of building the life of their dreams. Or they decide, hey, I would like even more of you. And then we roll into our coaching programs. And I love all of them. They're all different. They all offer different things. And I love each one of them differently. It's like kids. Like you can't love each one exactly the same and you love each one a little bit differently. So I'm always like, oh, but there's this too.
So how can we find you? Website, social media, all the things.
Okay. So social media on Instagram _Shauna Kennedy is where I post a lot. Website, soarcoaching.co. Those are the two that I really, really use. I love to have really connective conversations in my DMs. Again, for the safety part, our comments on social media often are public. And so if there's someone that needs a little bit of extra safety, DMs are definitely the way to go.
Awesome. Wow, Shauna, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, not just your life, but your heart, your soul, your work, your gifts. It's so inspiring and, just really honored to have you. There's so many pearls that you've given to us, just as a practitioner, as a woman, as a mom, as a human. So thank you. Thank you for having me. I love the synchronicity that just happened because you used the word pearls and my middle name is Pearl. So that was pretty cool. That was really awesome. It's been absolutely amazing. I have always loved getting to converse with you and work with you and learn from you. And so it's been an incredible honor to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Soul of Medicine podcast, where science meets soul for whole health healing. Are you ready to reclaim your energy, vitality, and soul purpose? Then feel free to head to our website at kcorpusmd.com and schedule an appointment for your root cause review.